we're doing that. We're going to go back to Hinkler and we're going to speak to the amazing Jodie McNally, who, after a very traumatic time on the card, has been able to finally get off the card. But there's a catch. Jodie, would you like to share your story?
Yeah. I was put on the card just after it was rolled in. I was one of the first ones to be put on the card, and I got the letter, and I just started sobbing. It was like, well, what's the frickin' point? I mean, I'm on a disability stream of New Start, which means they know I can't work full time. So there's no way at all off the card because the opt out hadn't been put in yet. So the only way I could have got off the card then was if I aged out of it before they changed the age limit for it. I went straight away to a social worker at Centrelink because I was in the middle of an anxiety attack over dealing with it because I'd known so many people having problems paying rent and bills, and I was living in emergency accommodation, and it was already so very stressful in my life just being in this emergency accommodation with it was a very difficult living situation in general with an alcoholic in the house who started raging and was not a pleasant person with. And so I went to the social worker and said, I can't deal with this card. It's going to cause me a lot of problems. I'm not going to be able to deal with it. So she wrote a recommendation and everything and sent it off, and then I waited and I waited and waited, and about 4 or 5 months later, I think, they sent back a rejection saying that all the problems I'd said that I would probably have with the card, I could just do them easily. You know, I could just sort them out, just fine problems. I pay my rent, I could do direct debits, I could get $200 a month in cash if it was needed, and it was all going to be hunky-dory, you know? And I read it and I was like, well, my experience so far hasn't been anything like that because I had problems with them not paying direct debits on time, with them not paying at the right time of day. My insurance, for example, it would come out, at first it would come out first thing in the morning, which it had been doing for years since I first got it. And then it started coming out at like 8 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. So the first time it did it, I'd gone grocery shopping thinking, oh yeah, my bills have come out. It's all good. Whatever's left in there is my grocery money, which is how I've been living for years. And I spent I spent a normal amount on groceries, which was a lot because my rent was over half my income, plus bills on top. And I got a message from my insurance later that night saying it had declined. So I checked into and I was $2 short. I had plenty of money in my personal account to be able to cover the whole thing, but I was $2 short in Indu because they hadn't taken it out at the right time of day. So I had to go through and pay it from my personal account and sort it all out so I would change it back to the right payment next fortnight. And it was a whole lot of hassle when just coming out of my personal account would not have had a problem. It would come out first thing in the morning. I'd have gone grocery shopping, no problems. So then 6 months after the card came through, I had to get permission to pay rent. Because if you're not on a lease, like in emergency accommodation or private accommodation, you don't have a lease because you don't know how long you're going to be there. So I had to get special forms. I had to get the landlord to fill them out. I had to go get them witnessed at the Indu shop front. Then I had to get them to send them in, and then I had to wait for them to approve it, which took days, which meant that my rent was 4 days overdue by the time I got permission to be able to transfer the rent over. And I had constantly in my, where's my rent? Where's my rent? Where's my rent? I'm like, the money's there. I haven't touched it. I just can't get it out of the account. There is no way to get it out of there. And finally I could get 4 days later. And that started, most of the anxiety started around there, because I was like, well, how can I be sure that I'm going to pay my rent anytime? Because they can do this at any time. They can just say, oh no, we need proof that you're paying rent, and how much, and to who, and all this really frustrating stuff.
Can I
And
just ask a question
so
with those? The
then
forms,
a couple of months later, I
sorry.
hurt my back again,
Yeah.
which ends up, yeah.
And so were the forms that you were
Sorry,
given, were they from the department or were they from Inju?
I got them from the shop front. No,
Yeah.
I called Indu and they emailed them to me.
Okay.
And I didn't have anything on them to say who they were for. They just said out of a housing limit increase. So I didn't know if it was an official form, just a form that they told me I had to fill out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never had to permission to pay rent in my life. Not even when I was 15 living out of home, I did to get permission to pay rent. You know, I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't have to ask a private company for permission. So a couple months later, I hurt my back. I was in an extreme amount of pain, because no pain medications work on it except to knock you out if they're strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in extreme amounts of pain. I was having major anxiety attacks over paying bills. I was not in a good place mentally, because I was living somewhere I couldn't have access to a fridge, so I had to live on tinned food. I was living on a packet of porridge, a popper for the vitamin C so I wouldn't get scurvy, and a tin of food each day. And sometimes when I'm in severe financial stress like that, I start hoarding food, because I think, well, if something bad comes along, I don't know what's going to happen. I've got to have something to eat. So I was skipping 2-3 days of food at a time, because I had to have a stockpile to be able to eat if an emergency came along. So I wasn't very well mentally. I was in pain. I was filled with anxiety. I was having panic attacks. My mental health was, I don't think it's been low in my whole life ever. And so I went and I made a doctor appointment and got a mental health plan. But the problem with that was the doctors, the psychiatrists locally, when you have a mental health plan, you have to pay an out-of-pocket fee up front, and that's $80. You have to pay
Wow.
$80 to see a psychiatrist. I didn't have anything left over after food. I didn't have, one time I did my shopping, I had 2 cents left. 2 cents. And I'm supposed to be able to pay $80 to see a psychiatrist to help me deal with the anxiety and stress and pain, and my health and mental health was just plummeting. So I went and saw the doctor again, and he sent me down to Brisbane for a spinal health clinic to try and help with my back pain. And while I was down there, I mentioned that I hadn't been able to see any mental health professionals, and they said, "Oh, we've got this telehealth thing where you can free talk to all these specialists." So I started seeing specialists, and then they prescribed me, they said, double this antidepressant that you're already on for nerve pain, take this second one, take this third medication whenever you have a panic attack, and go home. We'll see you every week via video link. We should be able to help this way. And it did help. The panic attacks were managed medication, which I've never had to do before in my life. I've been taking it ever since. I spent a whole month basically unable to function. My brain was just non-existent for a whole month because that's
Okay.
how long it takes medication to
Yeah.
basically build up enough in your brain so it levels you out properly. So then the next problem was the person living in the house, alcoholic. He got very abusive. He started doing other drugs. He said he was going to do something that I just was a bad idea, and let his mom know that he was going to do something possibly going to end him up in trouble with the police. And he slashed my tires. So I fled that house well and ended up in safe housing because there was no public housing whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I've also had to deal with getting permission to pay rent here as well because it's private accommodation. The landlord lives in the house as well. And I've had to do that 4 times in 6 months.
You've recently just come out of
And it's
hospital
coming
having a
up
heart attack,
soon.
Jodie. Is that true?
Yeah, in the middle there. They finally, 9 months after my application to opt out, because I was
Nine
right there, first day
months.
it was able to, went and applied to opt out. 9 months it took them to just see that whether I could, and rejected it, saying as I was at risk at homelessness, and because my card had declined, which was their fault because
So
they
you were
didn't
at
take
risk
out
of
my debit.
homelessness because somebody else's drunken violence, and they wouldn't let you off the card because you were the
Yeah,
one at risk. Okay.